right, welcome, Dr. Patrick Porter. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a little while for us to get together, but I'm very, very excited to have you here. So thank you for your time.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So fascination with everything that you do. So I want to hear a little bit about how you actually got into, all of this brain entrainment technology and techniques. I'm so sorry. So give me a little bit of a history, I guess, on how you ended up here.
Okay. Well, it all started because my dad was a Silva instructor, the Silva method, which is a meditation practice. I grew up with that. So I was trained in that from the time I was 12 years old till now. I mean, still using portions of it. So they use something called the Silva sound, which puts you into a state of alpha. So that kind of engaged my curiosity about how sound affects people. And it helped me in my school and in my sports and things like that. So when I got older, I started working with my dad, giving seminars, and then always looking for different ways to improve people's experience with going into altered states. I went to school first for electronics, not because I was going to create BrainTap or anything like that. I was really into, at that time, just tinkering with radios and TVs, which you don't even fix anymore. You just throw them out. But back when I was a kid, you actually fixed them. And so I went to school for electronics. And then I ran into a group called Light and Sound Research, and I went to work with them. And they had a big clinical model that was $10,000. And we were, there's a long story behind that we don't have to go into here, but they were trying to recreate it because the founder had passed away. And I basically was helping them reverse engineer it and figure out, because the guy left no plans and he died, which happens a lot with these inventors that are afraid somebody's going to, steal their idea. And then while we were doing it, we realized that I could create a smaller version of it. It was called the MC Square. And we built that back in the 80s. And I've been actually using it ever since. I started a franchise company to sell them. Then I sold that company. And then when that company went out of business, because I sold it out over time. So that was supposed to be like my retirement, although I was too young to retire, but I was doing other things living in California. And then my sister was still working for them. And she said, Patrick, you better go back to work because this isn't going to last. They're not running it like you. And but it gave me the money that I needed to start BrainTap. And I started that in 2013 with the idea that I wanted to create something new, different, and better, because the other one was a lot of wires and a lot of confusion. And of course, it didn't use apps. And, there were a lot of things that we didn't have back then that as we've evolved it. And really, I was always looking for a way to help people get into a better state of mind. And I believe in something called there's an effect that happens when people meditate, and it actually changes the morphogenetic field. In fact, they did a study with the Maharishi, they call it the Maharishi effect. And they did a study here in Washington, D.C., where he sent meditators there. And this really piqued my interest because during the study, while they were meditating, crime went down over 25%. In the history of the world, in the summer in Washington, D.C., the crime has never went down. When they stopped meditating, crime went right back up. So it was like proven. And also people getting hurt, hospitalized went down just by them meditating. So I thought, wow, we've got to design something that can get more people into this meditative state of peace and harmony and gratitude. And so that was my main focus. And now, we're on a mission to better 1 billion brains, because I believe if we get 1 billion people brain tapping, we're gonna affect the planet. And we're going to live more in a world of cooperation and collaboration rather than in war and greed. And, everybody wants something. We're in this together. I mean, nobody gets out of here alive. So, we need to work together to make it a great place to live.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the Silva. I actually haven't had anyone else mention that to me. My mum studied the Silva method when I was very young, and she used to always give me little snippets of pieces of gold that she learned from the method. But I haven't heard it mentioned much since, which, I mentioned it to others and they have no idea what it was or what it is. And it was powerful. She would use it in the car park, like,
Yeah.
get a park up and boom, there it is. I'm like, oh, Mum, you're magic.
Yeah, parking spaces were one of their big things that they would do.
Exactly. But it's a beautiful way of looking at it, because so many methods, but it's an ability to have a technology that's actually allowing for that. There's that the heart math method, but it requires certain things from people versus an actual technology that you can use and utilize, and actually the measurement and your beautiful voice talking everyone through things as well. So I just love the idea of it. And so talk me through, Patrick, for everyone who don't know what the BrainTap is, the technology, what it actually has, obviously the light waves, the brain waves, all the different music and that 360 view. And then we'll walk into a little bit more of the research around that specifically.
Sure. Yeah, what we started with was retinal flashing. And the reason we did that is we started to realize that, and this was proven through research, that when you close your eyes without retinal flashing, without the light, your brain, you actually shut down 30% of your brain. So that's why a lot of people, when they meditate, they can't stay awake because they don't have energy. A lot of people are just burned out right now. So your eyes also have the most mitochondria. So it's where your body absorbs light energy and also transmits light energy. So then we also took that a step further by introducing lights in the ears. Then people look at that, they go, why would you have lights in the ears? Well, actually, every cell of your body has light receptors. So it's not like just your eyes. Every cell of your body has those. That's why if you sleep in a room that has light, it keeps you awake, because the cells of your body start absorbing light energy and they wake up. But what we did with the light in the ears is every 2 minutes, it changes to another frequency of light. Even though it's red and blue light, 470 nanometer and 650 nanometer light, it's pulsing at one of the Noget frequencies. Now, Dr. Noget was the guy who invented auricular therapy, which most people know as Chinese acupuncture, but as Americans, you got to change the name and own it. So he called it auricular therapy. And what it is, there's different regions of the ears that they can put needles in or stones in or pebbles, and it actually can change the flow of energy through the body. So there's something called photobiomodulation. So what we showed was if we bathe the ear in light, and we did 9 LEDs in each ear, because a 20-minute dose of that light is equivalent to a 2-minute dose of laser. So think of it like almost like a supplement for the brain. And all the blood from the body flows through the body every 45 seconds. But when it goes into the ears, it takes up to 3 minutes. So it's a great place to absorb photonic energy, because that's what hemoglobin does. It does it anyway. Even you don't have to be wearing the BrainTap for that to happen. It just does it. And then that photonic energy goes, because the ears regulate the temperature of the brain, that blood goes into the brain. So now we're delivering energy into the brain so it can do the work we need to do the rest of it. And then we have sounds. We have 3 different kinds of sounds. We have isochronic tones, which is like the planet. If we're sitting by the ocean, for instance, that's a 10 hertz frequency. It resonates and vibrates at that. That's alpha. If we go to the mountains, it's 7.8 hertz frequency. That's theta. And so we go to these different regions we call them earth frequencies, but they're really, our brain has mirror neurons, and it's always basically mirroring its environment. And it changes your epigenetics. It changes who you are every 40 seconds. That's how fast your genetics change based on these epigenetic properties. So we're exposing the body to these frequencies. The body's changing. And then when we use the binaural beats, which is actually, for those that don't know what a binaural beat is, if we put a 310 hertz frequency in one ear and a 300 in the other, the brain doesn't hear the 310 or the 300. It only hears the 10 hertz frequency. And it's weird because our brain is doing that all the time. One of the ways I tell people is, if you've ever recorded yourself on your phone, you go, do I sound like that? That's because you're hearing it differently from the outside than from the inside. And you're actually using that binaural effect because we have 2 ears. So your brain is actually measuring the difference between that sound from one side of the room to the other. It's doing that all the time, but because they're the same frequency, it doesn't have a mismatch. It just sounds weird. And then we've also, in that sound, we use music. There's music they call the Mozart effect. And what they've shown in that music is that if you play that music in the background while you're studying, this is something we learned in Silva too, while you're studying or doing work, you're actually smarter just by listening to that music. So I made sure that all of our music is what they call 10 cycle music. We call it 360 music too, because now with the way we can record it, it makes it feel like you're in a dome or you're in this
all the way
360 and back. Yeah, so you can have, and I use this dual voice induction sometimes where you hear my voice over here and over here and over here. So it's, we're activating different regions of the brain. And then there's always that voice that goes down the middle of your brain. That's the logical part of our nature. So all those things mixed together create really a stressful experience for the brain, but it's a good stress. It's like eustress. It's not a negative stress. And the only way we develop and grow and learn is through stress. So like a game, when we're playing a sport or, when we're having a conversation, those are stressful because you're listening to somebody, you're figuring out what you're going to say next. But if you're a communicator, you love that because you love the banter and you love talking back and forth. So we use gaming really to get the brain to participate, and we can measure the improvement of it. And that's what we've done in our research projects.
So with the actual lights themselves, so what sort of what are the lights? Do they change in terms of what the
eye lights only change they go between 0.5, which is delta, all the way up to 78, which is high gamma. So we have sessions that there's a whole gamma series that we did based on a psilocybin. I did a research project with a doctor in Dallas, Texas here, and we were working with veterans of war, and they were doing a psilocybin to basically liberate their brain and create more neuroplasticity. And what we wanted to see was, can we use BrainTap to integrate that neuroplasticity? But a good number of them didn't want to do the psilocybin. They were afraid that they were going to get addicted. And so what we did was we measured the brains of the guys going through it. And we realized that there was a region of the brain, like right around in this area, that just had a heightened degree of a really big amount of gamma activity. And they were having these kind of spiritual experiences. Well, then we realized that gamma produces GABA, which is a precursor to DMT. So they were getting that DMT endogenously through their own nervous system. And so we created a series, and people were having psilocybin trips with no psilocybin, because it's really about the frequency, the body mimicking it. So it's kind of like homeopathy or something like that, where the signature is there, but there's no real physical substance, because we really do live in an energy field. So if we can change the field, we change the way we respond to that field.
Yeah. And like you say, we can produce these things endogenously. So how do we heighten that, and what techniques can we use to actually bring that out naturally? And that is powerful, because there's so many restrictions around these psychedelic medicines that have so much clinical relevance, but also danger outside of that too. But this is just your own body, so you're utilizing that daily if you need to. Incredible.
I do it every morning. I do a gamma session every morning to get that kind of out of body, kind of out of world kind of thing. You take my mental vacation every morning. And and I've done a psilocybin before, so I kind of have the memories of that. So I can kind of, get that kind of experience every morning.
Absolutely. Yeah, if anyone has experienced any of these things, and you actually know, even DMT, ayahuasca and all that sort of stuff, you're going to be able to then remember, and there's that memory there. So talk me through, there's been a lot of research that you have done, and like you said, in conjunction with other programs, with other universities. What, obviously we talk stress, we talk dealing with, lifestyle around everyone at the moment is so intense, the fast-paced life, the environmental, as you said, epigenetics is changing constantly, massive, information coming through on a daily basis from our environment. Where can we really look at the focus, and what have you found in the research that is most useful? And we could say everything, because I believe it's everything, but it's
right. Yeah, I do too. But I think one of the main places we're focused on now that we did with Brazil, we had 3 universities in Brazil that were pharmaceutical schools that did studies with BrainTap and opioids. And the Brazilian government actually paid for the studies because they wanted to get people off these opioids that are causing so much trouble. And so in the study, they were diagnosed with a certain level of opioids, the group that used those. They could not change those during the study, because the problem with opioids are they become non-effective. They keep upping the dose, open the dose until they become toxic and they become addicts. And so we wanted to show what would happen if you did 3 BrainTap sessions a day. And we beat them in all 3 studies with significance. And those 3 studies are being now published in Brazil. And the Brazilian government has actually coined the term digital drug for BrainTap. So in the whole thing is really because our brain is the most powerful pharmacy on earth. It can release 30,000 different neurochemicals with a simple thought. So we can't take enough external chemicals to do the same thing that our brain can do. It's a marvel, and it's designed to heal itself. So we have to get rid of the thoughts, the traumas, or the toxins, and then the brain can do its job. But if any of those things are wrong, like if you have wrong thinking, your brain's not going to regulate, because thoughts are things to the brain. It doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So if you're shouldn't all over yourself all day long, you're never going to get the relief you need. Now, if you have a toxic diet, or a toxic home, like you have mold, or, all these things that are happening, or you don't get outside enough. These are things that affect the cellular system too. And then, of course, if you've had trauma, those are things you've got to heal. So I'm a big believer in in fact, my new book that's coming out, it's called Brain Fitness Blueprint. And I talk about the 3 phases, or the 3 waves. Number 1 is nutrition. You can't outthink a bad diet. So unless you teach me that you're Saint Germain, you can't eat junk and make a good body. You've got to eat healthy foods, and do it. And even, like people go, I want to have a 6-pack, like have the abs showing, but those abs are not made in the gym. They're made in the kitchen. And people don't realize that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we've got to get moving and breathing. If we're not moving and breathing, like doing Tai Chi or yoga or breath work, there's a lot of ways we can do it. Our lymph system does not have a heart like our bloodstream. So if that lymph system isn't moving, we're not detoxing. And we have metabolic lock, we get foggy brain, that leads to dementia, which leads to Alzheimer's, which is at all-time high because people are filling their bodies with junk and they're sitting on the TV, watching TV all day. They say the average person watches 40 hours of television a week. So I'm wondering who's watching my 40 hours, because I'm not watching it. And then number 3 is we need some kind of brain fitness, right? And that's where BrainTap comes in. Now, exercise can be brain fitness, but there's an athlete over here in America named Tom Brady. They might know him there as well. He actually is a BrainTap user, but he's also, his company TB12 is our exclusive entree to the pro world, the pro sports world. They use BrainTap. They call it prehab, because instead of waiting till your brain breaks down, why not get your brain working optimally? So that's what I tell people. You can prepare. You don't have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. You can have a breakthrough without the breakdown. But we're so conditioned to think, I'm just going to keep it as is until I break down, and then I'm going to do something. When my health goes to hell in a handbasket, I'm finally going to start eating healthy. I'm going to give up those cigarettes. I'm going to give up that drink every night. I'm going to, whatever it is, they start believing that they have time. And the reality is that you don't have time, because the body you have today was made 2 years ago. So by the time there's something wrong, you've already set the pattern, and that's much more difficult than creating the pattern, creating a pattern of health. That's the key here, is how do we train the brain and body to be healthy on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And then we take it to that next level of well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. What you said about, the basics, and that's really a key driver. And I've spoken to so many different people from all walks of professions and expertise, and the basics have to always be there. As you said, the nutrition, the movement, that's what takes to build this machine. And then you need to be able to, just like a car, service that machine. And it's prevention of the engine falling out of the car, versus waiting for the engine to fall out and putting a new one in. We don't have that. We can't do that. So absolutely. And I think prevention, and this is where I butt heads a lot with conventional medicine, because it's really the time and the money and education based on right now, the acute scenario versus prevention. Obviously, my field.
So funny. Yeah, I was just at a convention here in California with primary care physicians. Yeah. First time we ever went there. Yeah. And we were measuring their brains with the NeuroCheck, which is a device that can measure the nervous system. And I had to show them they had the worst brains we have ever measured. And I remember there's a guy named Dr. Joe Wallach that used to have and it's still available on the internet, it's called Dead Doctors Don't Lie, because the average doctor only lives to be 56. So why in the world are we going to them for healthcare? They're sick care, and they're not even taking care of themselves. And what was so funny was at the booth, these doctors are going, do I have to do this the rest of my life? And I said, when you prescribe medicine for people, do you ever tell them they have to do it the rest of their life? Of course they do. They get them. And I said, this is medication. Meditation is your medication. If you've got, it's something you do I love when people say, do you do it? They ask me, I said, yeah, I haven't missed a day. They go, is it addictive? I said, I don't know. I've been doing it since 1986. It's why wouldn't I keep doing it? It's serving me, and everybody has stress. So you either have to have a great strategy to deal with it, or you just have a great constitution. Like my two grandmas, they lived to be 90. My grandfathers didn't make it out of their 60s, so they couldn't handle that same amount of stress. And my grandmothers, they ate terribly. They had the genetics that they just, and I remember still eating dinner with my grandma. This was years ago. And she said, Patrick, I hope when you get older that it's going to be worth you not eating, the whatever. And I said, Grandma, I'm not doing it for when I get older. I'm doing it so I feel good now, because an hour after eating, you're going to be complaining about your stomach hurting. She did it every day, and it's like, they don't understand, you eat this way to feel good now. But so many people want that immediate gratification. They'd rather eat that junk food now, thinking it's health food, or thinking it's somehow going to liberate them, or they're going to have time to rebuild their body, when there's no time like now. We have to learn to forego some of these indulgences, because once you forego them for a little bit, you start to realize they're not really serving you. Sugar becomes too sweet, instead of being just a little thing.
Absolutely. And that mind over matter, I think, that genetic makeup is a massive one. But also my observation over the clinical years is also, those with strong mindset, positive mindset, mind over matter, or mind is matter. And therefore, those who have really strong mindsets tend to be healthier, because they're thinking in a much beautiful way, and the body is responding accordingly. So how do we shift that for those who are in that toxicity in their own thinking? And I see it here. Treating people, you do all the things that would work for someone else, and there's a block here, or there is an inability to think in that way in health, and then boom, nothing is working. As soon as you start to unravel that emotional suppression, then boom, they're actually starting to move in the right direction for their wellness, for their health. Yeah.
There's always an emotional component to every physiological problem, and if you don't deal with it, it's just going to come back again. The whole thing is that our body keeps score. So it's like a hard drive. So if we don't, the power of forgiveness and just being in the moment, when we test people, we know if somebody looks at life as a series of threats, they're going to test terribly. Those negative people that look at life like that, the people that look at life as a series of challenges and they're always happy and smiling, they might even be overweight, but they score really well. They might even eat a little bit of garbage or whatever, but they still score well, because their mind they're in such a good mood that changes things. And I tell people the biggest reason people right now today are in such bad shape is the liver. And they don't realize that the liver houses 25 grams of sugar. And every time you have a stressful event, it dumps it into the bloodstream. Now, sugar is the worst thing you can give your brain. So your brain is either burning sugar or it's burning fat. And it works best on fat, right? Ketones. But if you're dumping that much sugar into the system, it's going to be a sugar burner. And we've actually shown people how your metabolism can drop in half just by a stressful event. So some people are stressed out all day long. They wake up stressed, they go to sleep stressed. They actually watch the news to get more stress. It's just crazy what they do.
And the perception, I tell this to my clients too, is that, your body, like you said before, your mind perceives stress as the same in any form. Someone cuts you off in traffic, it still sees that as a tiger chasing you down the street. It still sees a TV show that you're watching as a stressful event. So you could be sitting watching and relaxing TV, watching a murder in front of you, and your body is perceiving that as it's happening to you. And it's making that connect again, I think. And a lot of people are just so disconnected from how we should be living our lives and how we should be thinking and how we should be looking after ourselves. And it's just more and more as I move through my practice and talk to people, it's just this common denominator constantly.
That's why the Maharishi said that the whole problems we have in the world is because most people cannot sit quietly for 10 minutes with their own thoughts. If you can't sit quietly for 10 minutes with your own thoughts, there's bigger problems for you. We need to resolve that because there's probably a lot of shame, guilt, all the negative emotions. And there's one thing that's common to all of those: lack of breathing. So when you think about fear, anxiety, anger, stress, you're not breathing. So the first thing I tell people, don't worry about all those negative emotions. Just start a breathing practice. And you'll find that you will shift your thinking, because you can't hold on to anger when you're breathing. You can't be depressed when you're breathing. You can only do these things when you have lack of breath and lack of oxygen in the body.
Absolutely. I totally agree. All these techniques that we have available to us, and breathing is free.
Yes.
Sunshine is free.
Yep.
All these. So
everything is free. You can get outside Earth and get rid of that excess energy in the system, things like that.
Grounding. And to what we have, it's so sad that we have all these availabilities at our footsteps, at our ground, but we don't use them, or most people don't use them. So I guess with people, it's and I love the psychology behind it all, is how do we make change? How do we motivate these things? And you'll see people, obviously they get sick, they want to make change, or they have a family member that is unwell, and that creates their own mortality change or thinking. And my biggest part of my business is how do you make people want to make this change, and what do you use as a motivator to get them on the way? Once they're there and they feel that, it's incredible. They want more of the good things, but it's how do you get to them to that point? How do you make them feel healthy and be healthy? And these technologies are fantastic in that it's easy. You put it on, there's nothing else to think about. You're doing it already, and then it makes you feel good, so you want to do it again the next day.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're creating your own neurochemistry. You're getting high on your own supply there, and it's all positive. Basically, people they don't really want to hold on to that anger and fear, but they just don't know what else to do. They actually, some people would say, become addicted to it, because but really it's their brain becomes patterned to it. They start to identify with it. Like people say, I'm a nervous Nelly, or I just get angry at people, and they start to name it and claim it. And they don't understand that they're writing programs for their subconscious. And then their subconscious plays them back while they're unconscious, because 75% of the time we're unconscious. We don't know. I mean, we're not controlling our heartbeats right now. I mean, we could stop and slow them down if we just focus. But the reality is that there's trillions of things going on inside our biological system that we have no thought about. They're still happening. But we do have control over the thoughts we think as we start thinking about them. Most people never think about their thoughts. They think that just because they have a thought, like, I should have dessert. Well, I should go have dessert. Well, it's just a thought. It's like, it's not, you don't have to do it, but because once they have the picture and then they see themselves enjoying it, the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. There's that fear of loss, and then they go do it. So you have to rehearse the opposite way. You have to rehearse those things, like what's it going to be like when you're healthy and capable of saying no occasionally. The power to say yes and no is one of the things every health practitioner has to teach their people, because they're used to saying no to all the wrong things and saying yes to all the wrong things. We need to teach them to say yes to the things that are going to give you growth and health and harmony, and say no to those things like the poison people in their life. There's gainers and there's drainers. There's people that when they walk in the room, it gets a little dimmer. You don't want to be around those people. You want to be around the bright lights, the people that are moving in the same direction, that have the energy that keep you smiling and keep you moving in the same direction, that cheer you on, that don't feel like they're a hater because you're thin and healthy, or whatever, whatever's going on, or you're successful in business. they actually applaud you. There are people out there, it's a sick behavior that we have, that people like to see their heroes fall. They like to see them on the way up, but they love to see them on the way down. It's just crazy. And I think it's all a matter of training. It's just the way we've been conditioned. I had a sister that wouldn't go to the store by herself when she was younger. And I said to her, Sarah, why don't you go to the store? She goes, oh, I don't know. I could get kidnapped and all this. And then that weekend, I saw her watching like 3 different, these Freddy Krueger movies right in a row, these Halloween movies. I go, Sarah, why are you watching these movies? No wonder you can't go to the store by yourself. You're filling your brain with this negative stuff. If it was up to me, I would take all the Stephen King novels that are negative. There's a lot of good ones he wrote, but they're all rubbish. They're all building fear and anxiety, and I'm sure he's made a fortune off them, but they're really bad for our psyche. They don't really feed our soul. They feed that negative side of ourselves.
Absolutely. It's choice of information coming in from all angles, isn't it? And, that
Mhm.
information from the horror movies, and they're at an all-time high. They're just starting to get, they're bigger and scarier. Like, I haven't been able to watch a horror movie since I was 9 years old, when I got absolutely Candyman did me in back then. So,
Well, the crazy thing is you're seeing hardly any comedies. I always tell people before you go to bed, if you want to watch something, just turn on a comedy, something gets you laughing, something light. Don't watch a spy novel or something that's suspenseful or fear-based, because your brain, and we've all had this happen to us, we fall asleep on the couch and maybe there's a war movie going on. Next thing you know, we're in our dream in the war, because that's what our subconscious does. It takes whatever we did last and it thinks that's important to us. So it includes it into our dream sequence and it amplifies that. So even though we're not in the war, then it starts thinking they must like this. So let me create this kind of conflict in their life, and so we want to watch things and entertain things, read books that are inspiring, and do things that are uplifting, because that's, if you want that in your life. If you want misery and pain, then there's certainly a prescription for that that's out there in the world that seems to be the everyday norm. It's sad.
Absolutely. I was reflecting on that this morning. Those who are around that all the time, obviously whatever energy you're around, you're going to create, or you're going to see more of that. That's just the common laws of energy. And then this morning, my Aura Ring warned me, and it said, look out, your heart rate variability is going down. Like, reflect on what has happened in the last week. And I reflected, and I'm like, I've actually been watching this series that's a little bit more of a psychological thriller. So I think my sleep has not actually been as deep. I've been in a stress state in my sleep. I'm like, oh my gosh, Jodi, stop it. This is not good.
Right. I mean, you got to watch those earlier instead
Exactly.
of like, if you watch them earlier than 2 to 3 hours before sleep, your brain has a chance to realize those are just entertainment. It's not reality. But when you're in that twilight state just before sleep, the brain is very suggestible at that time. So it'll include it in your dream sequence.
Absolutely. So, Patrick, talk to me a little bit more about practicalities of BrainTap. How you use them, age, differences. Clinically, how you're suggesting this to be used in clinics. Plus, I also wanted to ask, I'm not sure if the Desert Moon ladies do this, but we also have a hyperbaric here. Is it an opportunity to use these types of things within other technologies as well?
Oh, yeah, I love it in hyperbaric, as long as you don't have oxygen in there, where, if they can listen to their headphones in there, then they can use BrainTap in there. And we use it all the time with HBot, and you're not in the big Seacrest machines typically. And I don't know, they do have hyperbaric though. They have two big ones at Desert Moon. And when my wife and I go there, she gets in those all the time. I usually get an IV drip or something when I go there, something like that. But they have a lot of fun things there. But I love it. We do it with a lot of different technologies like red light beds, all these things, because what we're doing, whatever you're doing, if you're just laying there, you can also do brain training at the same time. And the nice thing about hyperbaric is you're getting more oxygen to those areas. You're getting the blood flow and the circulation. And so it's like a 1-2 punch with the therapy that's happening with BrainTap, because it's using light therapy. So you're getting that vasodilation, that blood flow, that circulation, nitric oxide release. So it's just amplifying in the brain. So, there's a lot of stem cell research now that they're showing that stem cells will go to where the light is. So when you're wearing the headset and you're activating, that's what's happening when you're doing HBOT, you're activating that stem cell production in the bones. So now it's going to the brain. More of it is, because the light's there focusing.
Yeah.
So you got this amplified effect, and we love it. But what I recommend, you can use the headset on anyone, any age, as long as they can listen to a pair of headphones. But usually before 4 years old, they don't really need it. I mean, their brain should be in a state of alpha and theta. They're not really that logical. Although there's a really cool video online where a mother is putting the BrainTap on their child. Looks like he's 1 year old or something. He's crying. As soon as he puts the BrainTap on, it stops crying. Then he takes the BrainTap off, starts crying. It's pretty cute. But I'm not going to say that it gets rid of colic or something like that. But what we find is that in the clinics, and we proved this with a concussion protocol that we did with a school in Gaylord, Michigan. We took Dr. Arkfeld, who ran the study, took every student in the school during 2020 that had a concussion. So whether it was a cheerleader or a football player or whatever the sport was, wrestling, didn't matter, basketball. If they got a concussion, every other one was given the BrainTap. The other wasn't. They all got the medical treatment that's prescribed, but only half of them got BrainTap. They then followed that student a year after they returned to play. A year after that, they actually realized when they did the neurological testing that they had a 30 to 70% neurological improvement, those people that wore the BrainTap over those that didn't. So we always recommend to our doctors, after you're done doing all the other therapies you do, then use that. Now, if you're doing IV therapy, we've actually shown that if you use BrainTap during IV therapy, you absorb 30% more of the nutrients because you're now so you're in a parasympathetic state. That's over somebody using their cell phone. So when you're using your cell phone, you're actually stressing out your body. You're not absorbing as much. I would never let someone use their cell phone in a therapy room because no matter how much, they're just not, unless they just want to pay you money and not get the absorption, because they're looking at their emails, they're answering texts, they're getting emotional, and that's going to drive their behavior to be more sympathetic instead of parasympathetic, which is what you need. So we have especially ketamine therapy. They wouldn't look at their phones during that anyway. But during ketamine therapy, we have sessions that are 66 minutes that are all the different solfeggio frequencies. So we have people coming in for 10 sessions of ketamine so they can experience the 10 different solfeggio frequencies while they're doing it, because you get a different experience every time. And that's a pretty cool experience. We have, we also have sessions that people just come in to do weight loss with BrainTap. We have over 200 sessions just for weight loss because stress is such a big deal. So most doctors have their own nutrition, they have their own supplements and things they recommend, but we become the mindset because, again, everything has an emotional component. The weight has an emotional component. And if you don't deal with that emotional component, they're just going to gain the weight back. And BrainTap, one of my old products, it was actually called the Pathfinder. We were featured in a magazine over here called People Magazine. And we had given them over 100 people that had lost half their weight and kept it off for more than 5 years without a diet. We just gave them the device because when you lower the stress, your metabolism increases and you're not burning sugar anymore. Your body can burn fat, just like we used to do back in the 70s and 60s, when there weren't very many overweight people. I mean, when I went to school, I graduated in 1980 from high school, and I only had one overweight person in my whole school. Now I go to my grandkids' school and I'm going, oh my God, I'm glad I'm not there because, almost every other, now my grandkids are very athletic and they're trim and fit, and we encourage them. They don't get to watch TV all the time. They don't get to be on their devices all the time. Life is meant to be lived, not played through a video game, but a lot of people use it as their babysitter and their children are suffering for it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I grew up on a farm riding horses. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even have a house back then. Like I was living in the stables. And now, I see my children, like I've got a 7 and 11-year-old, and, they always like, Mum, can I go on the TV? No, go outside. No, you can't. And then, we got 30-minute screen time limit on our whole day. That's it. So it's ruining it, and their ability to regulate their emotions afterwards. You can tell the difference. Absolutely.
Well, back before my son realized what was happening, I'd say, because he had him watching television before we picked him up one time, and Eli was just unbearable. I said, Alex, please just keep the TV off before we come over and get it, because it just dysregulates the brain. Absolutely. And it's designed to do that, to keep them glued to the TV, to make them stupid, so I mean, you can find good programming, but if you just let them pick, they're going to pick something silly, like maybe watching YouTube videos for hours, doing silly stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just on next. So Patrick, talk to me a little bit more about what that looks like from a scenario of benefit. Obviously you do yours every day. I would imagine every day is going to be the best, but what are we looking at for minimum time? Say if only people can come into a clinic or utilize it somewhere, what are the minimums that you would be looking at to get benefits?
We have some clinics that only have them listen to it once a week and they get a benefit. There's actually a 72-hour halo effect on the BrainTap. So your nervous system, everything's going to try to regulate back. So we need to interrupt that pattern. So if you can do it, I would say the best is every 3 days at first for the first 21 to 48 days or something like that. Most of our clinics will see them twice a week. because it's just not convenient. A lot of our clinics are only open 4 days a week because they're chiropractors and they don't, they have part-time jobs with full-time payments, so I always tell them, why don't you let your staff open up the other 2 days, and, because you have a community that would be willing to come in during those days. But a lot of our doctors would just sell the headset to the patients that want, or the clients that want it, to use it at home. At home, once a day is good, but twice a day is even better, and 3 times a day is excellent, because the time of the day is really important. In the morning, we train a brainwave called SMR, which is sensory motor rhythm. That's the one, as you get, more intelligent and better looking with age, that's the brainwave that actually atrophies. So we want to work on that. And that's the one we work on a lot with our dementia studies. And they're the only one that we change the afternoon session, because we have them do a longer SMR session, because we really need to get that brain woke up. It's basically going to sleep. It wants to sleep. It just wants to, there's a saying, the masses are asleep. Well, I've scanned about 30,000 brains over the last 10 years, and I can tell you they're not asleep, but they want to be, because they have high delta going on. And that high delta, even though I just saw a video from somebody saying that high delta was good. I've never seen high delta good when they're doing delta training. I can tell you right now, you don't need any delta training. Delta is unconscious. What you need is gamma training. That's super conscious. You want to go the other way, not downward. And then, so in the afternoon, we have sessions that are theta training, because we need to reboot the brain. And this happens to all of us, because in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock, no matter where you're at in the world, your temperature is going to drop 2 degrees. And in night, it's going to increase 2 degrees. So this is just a natural phenomenon with our body. But if our brain is dysregulated, we could get colder in the afternoon. That's why a lot of people say, I got to put my sweater on in the afternoon. They think it's colder, but it's just their body temperature. And at night, some people will wake up with a sweat because their body dysregulated. And it had more than, if you go to 3 degrees even, you'll start sweating.
Yeah.
So we do that. And then at night, we have sessions that are called Sleep RX. And those sessions are designed to put you to sleep. So you just put that on, go to sleep. And so depending upon when during the day you listen, you pick the sessions. Now we have 2,000 sessions, and some of them we have, like the music only sessions, we have them encoded for morning, afternoon, and evening. So depending upon when you're listening, you can listen to that piece of music you like, but have the right brain frequency at that time. So a lot of people have a misconception about meditation. They go, well, I meditate. Well, that's fine, but I've never seen a meditation do what BrainTap can do, ever. I mean, even gurus in India, I've never seen them beat BrainTap and what it can do for the brain as far as bringing energy in, because we train the brain at different times of the day to do different things. So that's the key to brain fitness. And I'm not saying it's a substitute for meditation, but it's actually will get the brain into the right frequencies so you can operate in the right wavelength. Let's say, at night, you need a brain that's going to shut down and go to sleep. You don't want that dopamine and cortisol and norepinephrine like you want in the morning. In the morning, you want that. That's why we call it digital coffee in the morning. We call it Quaaludes in the evening. We want to put the brain to sleep.
Yeah. So that's, fascinating. Obviously, I want to dive into a little bit more of the programs and even the protocols in regards to dementia, because that's something that is close to the heart for me. But also when you're meditating, you can do the brain tap at the same time, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You do
I do it every morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just put on one of the music series, and what do you want to, a lot of people will meditate, like with Silva was alpha. That's because we found that there's a lot of people out there that say, I meditate in theta, but I've not met them. And I've measured a lot of brains. Theta is very difficult to do. It takes a long time. I have met gurus that have done that, but it takes light, sound, and vibration to do that. It takes an immersive experience. So if you want to reach deep theta, you can put that on, do your meditation. And then the next time you meditate, you're going to have a deeper experience, because you practiced. And then you can also put it in gamma. And what will happen is your brain will start to condition when you're doing your meditation to those brain waves. So now you've learned to access those brainwave states while you're doing your, whatever you enjoy doing as meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about that, neuroplasticity and changing the patterning within the brain. And we can utilize that so much quicker with technologies like this, which is awesome. Like, it's so amazing. So amazing. So protocols and access to protocols, how do you decide then what you need on a daily basis, but also then lead me into, if you can, a little bit more about the dementia sort of side of things and the protocols there.
Sure. We do have protocols in the app, especially for the clinics. So we teach them those, and they're available to them. With dementia, we have actually a protocol sheet. And what we do is the morning sessions that are SMR. We have a brain fitness series that we write. Now, anybody can listen to that. But what we found in our study was when we listen to that, it's a 20-minute session. And it's really about engaging the brain, because for learning, you need more alpha than theta. But you need both of them. Those are states of hypermnesia or super memory states. The problem is that most people that we measure that have dementia, they have no alpha and theta. So think about it like a Wi-Fi network. They're there, but they don't have a way to access the information.
Yeah.
So once we activate that information, to give you an example of autistic children, because their brain profile is very much the same as a woman with a dementia or a guy with dementia, and they don't have alpha. With the autistic kids, we did a study in Orange County, California with the Dr. Joquita Handy, and she's a speech pathologist. She didn't even get a chance to teach them how to speak. When we got their brainwaves up to 23% alpha, 90% of them started speaking, which meant they already knew how to speak. They just couldn't do it because they didn't have the brainwave to do it. But as soon as that brainwave was activated, it's like a program that's inside of us. It knows how to do it. So it activated it in the state of alpha.
How long did it take to do that? How many sessions?
It took 4 weeks. And they all had the equipment at home because we were doing a study. We actually did a study against magnetic resonant therapy, which was $60,000. And we beat that study. We beat them with BrainTap, which is less than $1,000 for the headset in a year. And that study was $60,000, and it cost them all about $8,000 just to see if they qualified. And we took only the kids that disqualified from the study. So they already spent $8,000. So we gave them all a piece of equipment. We said, just go through this. You're not able to do magnetic resonant therapy. Let's see if we go side by side. And the thing was that magnetic resonant therapy did change the brain, but it didn't stick. With BrainTap, like we've shown the change over time. Like in our dementia study, we had 39% more neuroplasticity in 6 weeks. 6 months later, they had 42% more neuroplasticity. They actually got better. So these kids were getting better over time.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you've obviously got the light as well, because a lot of my treatment protocols around dementia is lighting different times of the day, the rapid firing of light, vibration therapies that we use a lot of, and obviously ketosis for a majority of the time. Yeah, and even during hyperbaric that we have here in a ketone state.
Ketosis. That's great. I mean, all those, when we did our study, it was just BrainTap, but Dr. Kelly Miller, he wrote a book called Saving Your Brain. You can get it he talks about his whole protocol, because when he does his whole protocol, it's even better. But when you're doing a study, you can only do one thing, or they'll say, oh, it was the hyperbaric, it wasn't BrainTap. And you could do a study with hyperbaric, and I'm sure you'd see really positive results. It's kind of like the 5 different therapies that are part of BrainTap. They all work well separately, but when you put them together, that synergy gives them kind of a rocket scientist. It gives them, more fuel to do the change, to create the change.
Which is so exciting, because to think that if you're having benefits to that degree from a study using only one piece of, change, then if you're coupling that, as you just said, with multiple things, what is possible? It's very exciting.
Yeah, I've actually got a good friend of mine now. His name is Dan Metcalf. We're going to be introducing this to the BrainTap world. He has a product called 60 Up. And it's an exercise platform for elderly people. And with that alone, he was getting people out of wheelchairs in 2 weeks. Now we've matched that with BrainTap, and we're getting phenomenal results because they can't do the movement like other people. It's a little balance board that he's created all these different exercises. He was a professional soccer player and became dancer and all these other things. And he created this board, and he helped some stars in Hollywood. And I just met him, and I said, we need to get this out to the world, because movement is so important, and they can't do Tai Chi or yoga yet. We want to get them to a point where they can, but his whole idea was, how can we get people functional? How can we get them to go get their own groceries, or, take care of themselves at home? And it's just, they're all movement therapy. So all those things in combination. So we also have supplements that we believe will help the brain, of course, and a lot of doctors know about those now in peptides and things like that are actually changing the whole landscape of what we're doing with the brain. So when you combine all these things, you get this magical healing, even though their doctors are telling them, I'm sorry, go take care of your affairs. Your next stop is somebody taking care of you, wiping your butt, and all this stuff. And that's not the reality. I mean, it's so sad that our doctors they're just Dr. Gloom and Doom, and because they're afraid they're going to get sued. And nobody's giving these elderly people hope. And the brain is designed to heal. That's what it does. But we have to have the right conditions. And if we provide those right conditions, it can heal. If we don't, of course, it's going to go bad, just like anything else. If you cut an apple in half and leave it out on the counter, it's going to rot, so that's the way it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, you just, I was just thinking as you're speaking, then obviously, alcohol, there's a huge issue with alcohol, and then obviously brain detriment according to that, but also addiction, and these sorts of things really can support and help addiction. Obviously the neuropathways, bringing your body back into the parasympathetic, amygdala firing, switching off, all these supports that are incredible as a conjunction to other treatments. So yeah, the scope is massive, Patrick. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, the key is, like with alcohol, I used to write programs for the state of Arizona here for DUIs. So if you got caught drunk driving, you would take my course. And one of the facts that I told people was that if you drink one beer a day, your brain drinks a quarter of an inch over the year. Just one beer a day. So it doesn't take a lot. And what they do know too is that one beer a day will change your personality, because it's rebraiding your DNA. It's changing who you are at a cellular level. So it's better to go out and get drunk one day a week than to drink every day, just even one beer, one glass of wine. If it's better to eat dark fruits to get the what you're thinking you're getting out of red wine, and plus you got to drink so much red wine, the benefits aren't there because you're drunk. You can't really get everything you need out of it. So, eat cranberries and, grapes themselves to get that, because there's something in that color that helps the brain. The dark colored fruits actually help the brain a lot more.
Incredible. Yeah, all those polyphenols and even resveratrol and things like that in there. Yeah, incredible. So with other supports for brain, what are other really detrimental things to the brain? Now let's talk there, because then we know what to completely avoid. So no drinking every day, that's one.
Well, there's always the landmines, like smoking and drinking and staying up late. It used to be we'd wear a badge of honor. I only sleep 5 hours a day. I only sleep 6 hours a day. Well, sleep is when you incubate your superpowers. So you're only hurting yourself. Sure, you can grit your teeth and get through it and do your thing, but sleep is when you do it. The other thing is, don't think of your past mistakes as being mistakes. Every one of us has a dark night of the soul. We had to go through something to get to where we are. That's how we incubate our superpowers too. We were being trained. The problem is that most people don't reframe them. They think of them as liabilities when actually they're assets. Because if you can get through it, like I did, I was held back in second grade, and I actually wrote in my book, I was blessed to be the son of an alcoholic, not poor me. My dad was an alcoholic. I'm going to be an alcoholic. Of course, that's a choice I could make, but I choose not to make that choice. And so there's, you've got to choose your reality. You got to choose what you want to do. And anything that happened to you, if we can look at it and say, you know what, I might not have liked it. It might not have been the best going through, but I needed it to get me here now. And your best thinking brought you here. If you're listening to this podcast, your best thinking brought you here now. Congratulations. But your best thinking isn't getting you out of here. You need to upgrade your thinking. So that's where these kind of things happen. And we need to upgrade consistently, because last year's thinking isn't going to work this year. And next year's thinking isn't going to work with this year's thinking. Everything's evolving. Everything's changing. And the more we get comfortable being uncomfortable, that's where we're going to really thrive and survive instead of just surviving. There's a big difference. And look at life as a series of challenges. The only threat, we have a magical body. When you think of people like Wim Hof, who can be injected with poisons and then he breathes them out of his body. That's like Superman stuff, like something you'd read in a comic book, and he's doing it in a laboratory.
Yeah.
Or taking these Buddhists that are meditating in the snow, and they put cold towels on them. And as they meditate, they dry the towels with their energy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like Superman stuff you'd read in a comic book, but these are humans doing it. So if they can do it, we can do it. We just have to access those states of consciousness to get that done.
Absolutely. We are all capable of doing those things. And that's why I think people get stuck, like you say. They need to reroute and continue to evolve and not feel like they need to stay the same because they feel safe. And it's that safety, I think, that we get scared of jumping out of that because it's good right now. Why would I want to move and change? And what might that look like? Whereas it's going to get better. Yeah. So Patrick, tell me a little bit more about where BrainTap is going now. What's coming up? What's exciting things is it evolving to, just like we should?
Oh, yes, we're always evolving. We're looking at efforts now, which is a way to measure blood flow through the brain. And we're working on a biofeedback BrainTap protocol. And we're playing with it right now in the lab in Brazil to perfect it, but we're going to have an interactive BrainTap. We're also looking at, we're building out at some point, it'll be on the market as a sleep mask that will measure your EEG while you sleep and help you perfect your sleep cycles. So you can get deep sleep. And if you come out of it, the equipment will actually turn on and retrain you. So it'll be a trainer for sleep. And that's just pure theoretical right now. I've just created it, but we're playing around with it. And I think we can solve that because instead of you waking up in the middle of the night, those of you that are waking up, we can detect that before you wake up and start a cycle of a light, sound, and vibration that will put you back into deep theta or delta and put you back to sleep. And then you keep that sleep cycle going, and then your brain learns that that's what you want to do at night. And because you're learning it in the way that the brain learns, pretty soon you won't need the sleep mask. It's just a trainer. And then you can use the BrainTap, or you can use the sleep mask during the day just to listen to a BrainTap session, because it's going to have a lot of the same technology, but it's going to knock out all the light. It's a mask you wear, and the actual electronics comes out of it so you can clean it, in case you sweat in it or your makeup got on it or whatever's going on with the mask.
And that's a really good, lead into better, obviously, say you're training the body. So you're not relying on it. You're allowing the body to naturally do it. But so many people are stuck and they can't actually shift out of those patterns. And it's at a detriment to their health, which if you can move that much faster, then all of the healing of any disease states will start to get better. And sleep is a superpower, isn't it? So incredible. And obviously research is constantly going on for you guys, which I love, backing in our product and wanting to have the best in my particular clinic, so then I can outlay knowing that these are progressive treatments that are moving and changing, but also the huge benefits. I'm very, very excited to try in the clinic in conjunction with a HBOT, even with myself too.
Well, our research that we did in Australia, where we took coal miners, that none of them were sleeping more than 3 minutes of deep sleep. And they were all drinking before they went on the job. This was in Western Australia. We got, out of 52 people, we got 32 of them to agree not to drink during the study. And we separated them. And within 3 weeks, they had a 70% improvement in sleep scores. And by the end of the 6 weeks, everyone, even the people just using the app, were sleeping over 70% improvement with an hour of deep sleep on average. And that's what you need. You need about an hour of deep sleep and 2 hours of REM. If you do that, I'm sure you'll see your Oura ring will score you in the 90s. And we weren't using Oura rings, we were using the BioStrap with these guys. And what the amazing part was is after the study, we told them, if you want to keep the scintigraphy watches, if you want to keep the BrainTap, you can have it, because, what are we going to do with it? We can't really resell it. And every one of them kept it. And when our doctor who's there, Nick, who's a psychologist in the area, and they're in Australia, he said that every one of them, when he checked in with them 3 weeks after the study, they'd all still been alcohol free. So that tells you they were drinking alcohol to sleep.
Exactly.
And as soon as they learned how to sleep, they were, because they had no circadian rhythm. They went to work in the dark, they worked in the dark, they left in the dark. Their body didn't know where they were at. They were in a hole all day long. It's a terrible job. And their quality of life went up 43%, their happiness score. So, because when they got off work, they were miserable. So now at least they had a life outside of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of my hardest clients are FIFO workers, as we call them, in the mines here, because we are in WA, and I get a lot of them, and it's lucky if they land here, because their awareness to actually bring them to this, to actually fix the problem versus just carry on, is powerful. But yeah, the timing of, even night shift and day shift changes dramatically between shift and shift. So yeah, there's huge health issues, as you say, and then there's coping strategies that come along with that too. Yeah, so fascinating. If we could just, like you say, get everyone in the world to have a BrainTap, we'd be all much happier.
Yes. Yeah, at least we wouldn't be carrying around that stress from relationship to relationship. We can unload it and have a fresh relationship when we meet up with someone.
Absolutely. Gone is the cortisol tire, as I call it.
Yes.
I've got this thing here. I'm like, it's your cortisol tire. You're carrying around your stress.
Yes, there you go. That's exactly right. That's perfect.
Yeah,
I like that. I'm going to steal that.
yeah.
You'll see me on a podcast here in the next couple of weeks saying their cortisol tire. Yeah.
Go for it. We can spread the cortisol tire information.
Yep.
Well, I thank you so much for your time, Patrick. I've taken enough of that, and I really appreciate it. Look, I'd love to have more discussions with you, and I am in America in October, so I don't know if you're around somewhere, we might be able to have another catch up and a meet up. But
Sure.
I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And if wherever you're at, let me know, because we're doing like 4 or 5 events during October. Maybe we're going to meet up at the same place. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be in Florida doing the microbiome. We've got the microbiome lab symposium, and we're doing a health optimization medicine and practice symposium just the day before at the same hotel in conjunction with them. So yeah, it's exciting times. So on that side of America.
yeah, that's where I'm at, actually. I'm in New Bern, North Carolina. I'm just up from Florida. It's about a 7-hour drive from Florida. I live on the coast too. I have 88 acres that we're building a health sanctuary where people will come and spend a week or a month. And we're just building it out now, but it's going to be an eco resort where it's all 100% off the grid. It'll have all the latest tech. I already have all the latest technology. I'm just going to have it there. I'll bring doctors out that can do stem cells and all the sorts of different therapies. And yeah, it's going to be a blast. I want people to come out here and just transform their physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and have maybe some of these psychedelic experiences out there too. Bring some of the people I know and have some events and just open people's minds to the possibilities of healing and health.
Absolutely. It's really taking off. Even in Australia, we now have the psilocybin and MDMA being legalized here for use for psychiatrists. So it's going to be really interesting how this space changes in the next year or so. But yeah, let me know when you get all that going. I'll be the first one to sign up. That sounds incredible.
All right, we will. Yeah, you'll hear about it. So
absolutely.
All right. Thanks for having me. This was very interesting, and we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Patrick. Have a good day. Well, have a good night. See you.
Okay.
Yeah, bye.